Blackhawks fans, and very happy NHL draft lottery night to you all. The big news to discuss tonight. Jonnie and Tony here alongside Tony on tap. How we doing, my friend?
Jonnie, we are feeling fantastic tonight here on Four Feathers Podcast. Programming note, normally over here talking about Sox losses and stuff, but I felt that I had to make an executive decision tonight, Jonnie. It's more appropriate to be talking about some hope, the future, and a potential change to the course of this Blackhawks rebuild. And I am so happy to be talking Blackhawks hockey with you. I'm going to just, crack a beer open here. It's fantastic news for the city of Chicago. It's fantastic news for Blackhawks fans. I'm ecstatic. I am absolutely ecstatic. I hope you are as well.
Dude, yes, I am as well. I'm feeling all of the same things, and hey, sometimes you just need to get a little bit lucky. And we're going to talk about the importance of all of that as we dive in here. But there was nothing you could do to control this. All you could do was sit and wait and watch and hope, right? That's all you could do is hope that it landed on your team. Every NHL fan base that was in this lottery here, all the ones that made the playoffs, were in this. We're all hoping for a slot there, get that number one, especially with all the hype surrounding who will be selected number one overall. All you can do is hope. So sitting there, being very nice to my ping pong balls, obviously, I hope everyone was. We gave that forewarning, right, on a few shows back, especially in the season eulogy when we did that. And everybody, congratulations. You did it right. The ping pong balls were kind to us. And when that card turned over and the Indian Head logo was on there at number one, I about lost it. Jumping up and down, and I think things are breaking on shelves around me. But I don't care. The Blackhawks got the number one pick in the draft lottery.
Yes, they did. And I was doing the same exact thing. As soon as we got to the commercial break and the Hawks were still on the board, I knew that we were either going to have some extreme heartbreak or get this number one pick. It was a very long commercial break. I think that was the longest commercial break I think I've ever watched in my entire life. You talk about when the card turned over, Jonnie, just a pure moment of joy as a Blackhawks fan. We entered this rebuild. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. There were moments down the stretch. We were on this show. You and Ron were giving me a little shit for wanting to win some games because we wanted the best overall odds. I still got to enjoy those victory beers. And we're still talking about getting to pick Connor Bedard, number one overall in the NHL draft. That's what it's all about. I'm feeling fantastic right now. I cannot be... I can't even express how happy I am with this.
Yeah, so you said that you were able to still enjoy those, and then now we're still getting here to enjoy this, which will be, something that we can enjoy for the long haul, right? But luckily, we were able to do that because it was luck. Like I just said in my open there, that was all you could do was sit and hope, wait and watch because we knew the odds. Well, let's run it down. Coming into the draft lottery after everything was finalized at the end of the regular season, the Blackhawks were guaranteed a top 5 pick, but 11.5% chance to land number one. Same goes for number 2, 11.5% chance, 7.4% for number 3, which is kind of weird because it was actually where they were, but they have to account for other teams being able to slot up, right? 40.7% for number 4. That's where I thought we were going to go. That was in my heart, just playing percentages here. And number 5 pick, 28.8%. Those are the odds coming in. So part of those 11.5 all worked out for the Blackhawks in this one. So on pins and needles, to say the least, leading up to this thing. But Tony, one thing I want to, like I said, it is all luck, but you talked about getting able to enjoy those victory beers. And part of why we were still able to do that during the season was because Luke Richardson has instilled a culture, right, within the Blackhawks. And now you can go and say, yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with it. And I can't make a general connection to it, but you go and watch in some hockey games and the hockey gods being in control of things, right? You go and look at that Vegas Edmonton game tonight. There's a goal called off for Vegas, even though they're dominating all night. Guess what? Next time down on the rush, they score. puck don't lie, all of that kind of stuff. The hockey gods controlling that. Blackhawks did it the right way. Whereas the Ducks, Blue Jackets look fucking absolutely disinterested at times. There were times where they just would not back check. They would not do the extra little effort plays during a game, and that would ensure some losses. And yeah, it gave you some better odds in the ping pong ball system. But in the hockey gods' minds, the Blackhawks doing things the right way were rewarded for it. That's my take on it.
That's well said, Johnny, and I love that. I thought at certain times the Blackhawks were going to put themselves in a position throughout this past season to be in a spot where you may not get to pick in that top three. And that was very real for a couple of moments. And a lot of that has to do with what you just talked about, the mentality that Luke Richardson has instilled in this team. We talked on our end of the season show about how Luke Richardson's system and all the positives that he's brought to this club in his first year are going to pay dividends. Now he gets to work with a guy like Connor Bedard, a generational talent. Man, that's got me pretty high on the Hawks right now, Johnny. And you talk about the hockey gods working in our favor here for doing the right things and all of that. Hey, man, I can buy into what you're saying here. I can buy into it big time because this is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of like karma, right? And I just look at performances and all the discussion that's been had about tanking, right? And our team's really tanking, and is management really wanting that team to tank? And sure, you want your best odds for picks and all that stuff, but players and coaches, are they tanking? And like I said, at times it looked like that was the case for the Anaheim Ducks, Club's Blue Jackets. For the Blackhawks, sure, there were a couple games they got pummeled in, but it was kind of more just a lack of talent. Like Jason Dickinson was still going out there and killing penalties, even if they were losing 4-1 in a game, right? Like we weren't like taking shifts off, no shortcuts, any of that shit. So that's just kind of my, universal kind of bringing it all in here take on that. But let's talk about who's going to be coming to Chicago. Connor Bedard, come on down, man. Unanimous consensus, number 1 overall pick. No doubt. I know we have to say presumably whenever we're writing about this and stuff, but we all know what's going to happen, right? We all know it's going to be Connor Bedard. This has been known for the last at least 2 years. NHL Central Scouting has projected him out even that far out there. And man, we go and look at a guy like Connor Bedard, just an absolute monster in juniors, playing for the Regina Pats. 143 points this year, Tony, in 57 games, 71 goals, 72 apples. Oh, and guess what? He also added 20 points in 7 playoff games. His team was eliminated in 7-game series, but hey, the 20 points is one of the few players who scored 10 goals in a 7-game series like that. Just incredible stuff. Connor Bedard is a generational talent, like you said, and I couldn't be more excited to see him wearing the Indian head sweater in the future.
I mean, don't look at a lot of players last 5 games and see 5 goals and 7 assists, and then go look at their last 10 games and it's 12 goals and 11 assists. That's 23 points in his last 10 games. He's finding the back of the net. He's finding ways to score. You can just type in Connor Bedard in your Google search bar and pull up some of the most ridiculous shit that you're going to see on ice right there in front of your eyes. And that's going to come to the United Center. And that's one of the reasons why he gets the title of Phenom. That's why he gets the generational player tag right on him right here. This is going to change the course of the next 10 years of Blackhawks hockey by winning this draft lottery. I can't imagine how most other fan bases feel when they look at this, Johnny, and we're going to get a lot of hate for this from a lot of other fan bases. They're going to be jealous. Yeah. They're going to be jealous. You had Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, you had the Cup era runs, and now you've got a tremendous amount of salary cap space to play with, and you are going to add a guy that can step in here that other players are going to want to come and sign with the Chicago Blackhawks to play with right out of this draft. that is best case scenario for the Chicago Blackhawks. I cannot be more excited about it, but it's also let's sit here and talk about this in a sobering fashion. If it wasn't this, I still think we would have been in a good position to bring on a guy like Fantilli. There was other options. It might have taken a little bit longer, but I do really think this speeds things up, Johnny. I think this
Yes.
speeds the rebuild up. You can look at the numbers of what the Hawks have sold tonight that's been tweeted out there by Ben Pope, Darren Ravel. I think it was close to $2.5 million in season tickets tonight. This is really going to speed this thing up. Free agents are going to want to come here this summer to play with Connor Bedard.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember it's not immediate contention that, it doesn't just happen like that. You don't just snap, just get this guy and he's already leading you to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Right. I agree with you, though. I think Kyle Davidson had to be reserved in he was excited. I don't know if you saw any of the reactions and so, some of the interviews that he did after. I was on ESPN and then on NBC Sports Chicago on their show afterward. He had said, does it really, how does this change things here? And, he talked around the edges of the impact of it because he can't say the name yet. Right. He refused to say the name on the air, which is smart by him. I don't want any tampering bullshit there. However, he had said about sticking to the process, and sure, you're still going to have to do that because as we, got in the comments here, and yeah, you go and look at it, you got 11 draft picks this year. So one of the things I think was mentioned there is you can move some of those because they're not just picks that have to be used, their currency as well. That's something that he has said going back to the trade deadline. So you got to keep that in mind. That will help you acquire other assets. Like you had said, the draw, the free agency sort of deals you want to sign to come play alongside Connor Bedard. And that goes for this summer, like you said, but more importantly, in summers ahead of seasons in which you really know that you have a team in place to contend because one guy just can't do it, right? You go and look at why isn't Connor McDavid won a cup yet, right? He can't just be one guy. He's even got another superstar alongside him, Leon Draisaitl. So while this is all very exciting, I remember that there is still a team aspect to it, but I would agree with you that it speeds things up in their competitive timeline in terms of, I would say, getting back to the playoffs. That puts you, I would say, getting Connor Bedard puts you 2 years ahead of where you would have been without him. Fantilli, maybe talk about impact and see how he would have adjusted, and that might have been something a little bit further down the line. You say, okay, well, now we feel a little bit closer because this kid is the real deal. When you go and have this level of talent, add that to your mix right away, and it, of course, will be here right away. So that also kind of strings away some of the BS about something like, oh, if you get a college kid, then he's going to go and have to play at least 1 year there, and then come over into pro hockey and get a seasoning there, and I'm not dealing with that. This kid's jumping in right away into the mix. So that already sets him on the development track. And then you go and continue the development of guys that you already have in the system. Frank Nazar, Kevin Korchinski, Nolan Allen, plenty of other guys here that are going to need to help build a championship core again, right? But it already accelerates it when you got lucky to have that generational talent because that's a big piece of the puzzle, as we know from past experience, building a team around guys like Kane and Taves.
I think that's excellently said there, Johnny. And I'm not expecting this team to jump back into playoff contention immediately, but you're going to have a ramp up period now. And I think what this solves is a question that we were asking ourselves a couple of times during this past season is who is the next face of the Chicago Blackhawks? You have a clear answer now. You have a guy who's there who can take those reins, and that's Connor Bedard. Now, those are going to be big shoes to fill. You look at some of the predecessors who were here in Jonathan Taves, Patrick Kane, Marian Hossa, Duncan Keith. The list goes on and on. But if there was a successor to this, Connor Bedard fits that mold. Just hearing some of the things that are talked about this kid, tonight on both the NHL Network, ESPN, and then in the post lottery draft, show that Colby Cohen, Pat Boyle did, and Charlie Emiliotis was on there. They were talking about stuff, from Connor Bedard's past, where when he was a young kid, he would question why guys are sitting on the bench talking about video games. Why weren't they focused on the game? Generational talent, stuff like that. This kid wants to win at the NHL level. He was born to play hockey, and not that other guys are out there, Johnny, on the Blackhawks that don't have the same level of drive and compete, but they might not have the raw talent that Connor Bedard has. You can see that when you watch his highlight reels. He's going to bring excitement. He's going to be a face. We made jokes. I made jokes specifically about who's going to be the next guy that's in the Chevy commercials. I'm sure Chevy reps are calling up the Chicago Blackhawks right now saying, let's get Connor Bedard a Chevy. And Kyle Davidson's got to sit there and say, wait a second, make it, we got to make it through the NHL draft in order to actually say his name, as you mentioned. But, I mean, this kid's going to have a world of opportunity in Chicago, an absolute world of opportunity. I can't wait to watch it all unfold. And this was just day one. The excitement continues to build from here.
Dude, I agree 100%. And that would be hilarious if what Connor Bedard drives becomes the next Chevy ad that you see on those Blackhawks commercials in between periods or whatnot. Man, this is all just incredibly exciting. I think the whole hockey world, like you had said, is jealous of the Blackhawks, at least among those teams that were in the lottery there. But it just makes you feel like this was all worth it. Not that it wouldn't have been, because this is the right way to go about building a team. And it's a long haul process. I agree. Like we got a comment here when we were talking about, I'm not as concerned about the speed of the rebuild, but I think it improves the floor and ceiling of the potential of the team. And, agreed with your take on the free agents wanting to come and sign here. Those are the kind of things that speed it up though, around the perimeter, right? So it might take a while. If you say you were going about it, and they would still be going about the right way, even if they weren't getting Connor Bedard here, right? But it might take a little bit longer for people to, guys around the league to come around and see that, okay, well, yeah, this team really is going to be the next, potential Stanley Cup contender, and want to come and sign there. It would take some more convincing, whereas having that pull, having that, that sway, that swagger of sorts just caked in is already a bonus there. So I guess that's where I wanted to go with that. And when I'm just thinking about it right now, because you just locked yourself in for next year.
Absolutely did.
The reception on the home opener, man, what's that going to be like?
Wow. I can't even imagine what this is going to be like when he's lined up for his first anthem. Like, just think about that. That's going to be a loud anthem, Johnny. His first goal, the firsts are all just right there for me. I'm trying to envision them in my head as we sit here and talk about this, but it's going to be storylines, cinematic. As you said, preface this with everything else. Next year might still not be the best year for the Chicago Blackhawks, but this is the chance to start something special over again. And that's what we needed here. That's exactly what we needed here. I know you and I have sort of taken a step back and sat there and said, well, if the Blackhawks had a 2 or 3 pick and we didn't, fuck it. At this point, we've got Connor Bedard locked up. Like, it's past that point. Everything else from here should be trajectory up as long as Kyle Davidson continues to execute the way that he has. And we've given him some slack. But if you go back to our tank center, one of the reasons why Kyle Davidson packed so many draft picks in these next couple drafts and unloaded the talent on this roster that he was able to accumulate was to build in sort of an insurance plan for if you didn't get number one. Now you've got number one and you have the insurance plan of all these extra picks. You brought it up just a little bit ago. You can move some of these. You can acquire talent. More importantly, you don't have a rebuild coach here. You've got a long-term coach here. Luke Richardson's a long-term coach guy. NHL vets want to come play for this guy. We watched his system over the past year, and it works. He was able to get more out of probably the worst roster assembled as far as NHL talent down the stretch than some of these other NHL teams were able to provide. And that's amazing in and of itself.
Right.
So once you have a superstar and you've got other guys in the system, you mentioned Korchinski, Nazar, some of these other guys that can come up and be developed. You've already got Seth Jones locked in long-term here, Johnny. There's some real pieces that you can go out and build a winner within in a couple of years here. There's going to be growing pains, but this is just the start. This is day one of a new era of Blackhawks hockey, and I'm excited to be on board. And I am locked in because I want to be there. I want to be part of it.
Yeah, it's all super exciting. Obviously, I brought up that question for you, just kind of get the hairs on the arm raised there. A little goosebump action here, Tony. That's what's kind of going through my system right now. But when you're talking about things being cinematic here, I think you brought up that word, and we love that word. It's funny that when we do get to select him, you know where it's going to be? Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. Kyle Davidson. Gary Bettman's going to read off the pick there, and Kyle Davidson's going to greet Connor Bedard, and there's going to be all the cameras and all the lights, and there's going to be a lot of boos coming in from the Nashville people that are there. I'm sure there will be a number, especially knowing that we have number one, Blackhawks fans. Are they going to keep the red out of the draft? Is that going to be a thing?
That's a great question.
Going to do that? You have to reinstitute those policies now. Now that the Blackhawks are hashtag back at Nashville. I'm looking forward to that. Just the day itself too of the draft. Obviously, we're getting ahead talking about plans for the future of this team, and obviously that's what this is all about. However, the process of that itself, I think that was kind of an afterthought for me. But now that I'm thinking about it, I had a little shit-eating smirk on my face.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can hang a banner. The Blackhawks drafted Connor Bedard here in Nashville. I think it'd be fitting. Hang a banner down there in Nashville. This is where Cup Run era 2.0 started for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, right. I think it's appropriate. I mean, they hang banners for everything, so.
Yeah, they should hang a banner that this is where Connor Bedard was drafted into the Blackhawks. I think it fits.
Yeah, I mean, appropriate by our standards here at Four Feathers Podcast. Absolutely.
They can even do it in their own team colors if they want to, continue to keep the red out. But
yeah. Oh man, this whole thing, this whole process. Well, I think back on the season and how tough it was at some times, right? And there were a number of factors that went into this. Obviously, we closed the book on one era here, but having the next one be written so strongly at the beginning, and that the like in the SpongeBob meme where he's writing and it's like, oh, it's like how long you've been writing for whatever, and it's just the really fancy big T. We'll put that as a C and make another letter B there. So that's where the start of this thing is. That's how we're opening the next book of great Blackhawks history.
Hey, this team has had some generational players before. I'm just glad that history continues for this organization. It was some really dark times over the past couple of seasons. I'm ready to move on from that and start the next chapter. That said, I saw some things tonight and heard some things tonight. Why is it now that people are bringing up the potential of Patrick Kane returning? We heard in Kane's post-game interview the other day, or post-season presser, I should say, that, the Blackhawks are rebuilding. I think even our guy Comiskey said some stuff on the timeline tonight, putting Patrick Kane into that right wing spot. Does it change the trajectory there for you, Johnny? What are your thoughts here? Because I think that's where Hawks fans are going to go, is do you bring back Kane to play with Connor Bedard and all this other stuff. I don't want to be too latched onto it because I still don't believe that that's a legitimate thing for us at this moment. It just doesn't feel like that's going to happen to me. But I'm curious. I haven't asked you this question. Do you think it could be a potential reunion in Chicago with some of these other guys? Alex DeBrinket's name has been tossed around as well. Do you think some of these other guys come back here now that you do have another generational talent that's going to join this roster?
I'm glad you asked that because I've had a couple of conversations with different groups of people regarding this matter. And would Patrick Kane now want to return to the Blackhawks because the Blackhawks have the number one pick and Connor Bedard will be that pick? It certainly makes it a lot more enticing, right? I mean, you want to go to the hotel with all the luxury amenities and not the rundown Motel 6, right? I mean, that's just a natural thing.
Right.
So, but there's other factors that go into that too. The Blackhawks still aren't ready to contend yet. I think that's important to bring up here. And you need to think about where Patrick Kane is at in his career. I'm talking about him specifically. And I think his comment exactly was that it hadn't crossed my mind. He said, well, they're rebuilding, so it hadn't crossed my mind. I want to say that was close to right along the exact quote that he had given there. And think about it in that frame, yeah, they're still rebuilding. So if that's where his head is at there, then that's his decision to make. He doesn't have a whole lot of time left in the league. He's still going to play, obviously. He's still going to want to bring his talents to wherever he's going to do, and he's still going to do some amazing things. But we all know, just age, father time, it happens. He's only got a certain finite window left here in his career. So how quickly does he think they could, jump back into contention there if he were to come back and sign? You got one that I think definitely pushes up the timeline a little bit in a piece that you're going to acquire here in Connor Bedard. But then as for other guys like Alex DeBrincat, I know he's a fan favorite. So that's something that, I would be welcome to. I mean, shit, you got to love a 40 goal scorer. So I'd be open to it. But once again, that's his decision. Is there another team that's going to shell out? Maybe a team that didn't land where they wanted to in the draft lottery. Are they just going to go and shell out and give him a bunch of money because we want this goal scorer? I know he had a little bit of a dip there with Ottawa, but we know the potential, right, for his shooting ability. So there's a lot of factors at play. And I think a lot of it will have to do, especially when you're talking about guys that are free agents. When you're a free agent, it's your decision to make. Sure, you've got to have suitors, but we're talking about players that will have suitors, right? Teams will offer these guys contracts, make competitive offers at least. And it's a matter of them picking where they want to go. And what's the best fit? Shit, we saw someone like Johnny Gaudreau take a little bit less money, right, to go to a place where he wanted to be, closer to home, whatever. There's plenty of factors at play for all people. Shit, maybe this is finally, I think people have talked about it for years on end now, but does Patrick Kane actually want to go home to Buffalo? Because guess what? They're further along in their rebuild of sorts to being into contention there. Well, they didn't make it this year, but they're a lot closer, and they got some bona fide pieces on that. So I think that's an option for Patrick Kane. It's definitely on the table. But then again, I go back into some of the quotes that he had given. I think it was kind of when this whole thing kicked off. I think after the Hagel trade and all of that. And the initial sentiment was that he wanted to stay and finish with the Blackhawks and see the rebuild through, right? And one thing that he talked about was being able to collect all of those accolades, franchise accolades, because he's up there on so many point leaderboards, assist leaderboards, all that stuff, playoff points, name it. He's up there. Going to go down as greatest Blackhawk of all time, right?
Could he be challenged?
Yeah, right.
This is a real question.
Now I guess we
could
have
he be challenged?
Yeah, right. That's going to be something that's going to have to play out in the future here. But you get where I'm going there. There is still possible other things that could draw him besides just the Blackhawks getting Connor Bedard there. So it's a number of factors that you have to consider when it comes to that. But sure, I mean, anything's possible. Free agents for a reason.
Anything is possible. I believe we had a Sox on Tap show named that the other day. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's sort of, for me, still, I'm in shock that this has taken place So I haven't really thought of, the steps beyond the Blackhawks obtaining Connor Bedard in the NHL draft. But I think, there's a possibility the door is sort of open now for those discussions. Had this gone differently, I don't think we would even be asking that question.
Right.
But to me, some of the stuff you said earlier in terms of where we're at in the rebuild, yes, this accelerates things, but I don't know if that really means here's a reunion with Patrick Kane immediately. We'll see how that plays out. I just wanted your initial reaction to it.
Right. Yeah. And when I say accelerates things, you got to keep in mind that I've said it, I sound like a broken record now, but doesn't mean immediate contention. I just think that you raise that bar, and that makes things a lot more attractive for adding other pieces. And then it also just takes a weight off of other guys that'll be coming up. Frank Nazar, you don't have to be 1C, buddy. You're going to be 2, right?
Yep.
When we get good, you're going to be 2. So it's like, you don't need to go and light the world, like the UC on fire in your rookie year. You can go and learn. It's like, and that's the other thing for Connor Bedard here. We're so excited about it, but it's like, hey, if he hits like some patches of struggling, we're going to be like, yeah, well, it's not junior hockey anymore. You're playing against the best in the world. It's the NHL. It's the national. And we'll be okay with it because we know that we're still on this timeline here. And like I said, yeah, maybe accelerated a little bit. It's just where I think when it all comes together, I guess is what I'm saying, is that this will just make it easier to mesh into that period when that does happen. But a lot of exciting stuff, man. It's put it as Jimmy Conway and Goodfellas. It's gonna be a good summer.
Yeah. Hop on board now is sort of my thought in this whole entire thing. If you weren't on board before, there were some dark years for the Chicago Blackhawks. Some bad seasons, some wasted potential there at the end. They've done a tremendous job, and now they've gotten lucky with it. And that's where you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. This morning, 10% chance that you were going to get light at the end of the tunnel.
11.5.
11.5. We have to deliver the facts only, so thank you for the correction there. There is light at the end of the tunnel now, though. I think that's what's driving the $2.5 million in ticket sales tonight for the Chicago Blackhawks. You see the light at the end of the tunnel now if you are a Chicago Blackhawks fan.
Yeah.
That's the potential for the cinematic endings and the Stanley Cup returning to Chicago.
Yeah. Right. It's a great feeling to have, man. When I think about it, I think Fantilli's still going to be a good player. There's no doubt about that. But it just goes to show you how this reaction's been. You go and see it in the ticket sales, and sure, there's flashy names that draw the attention, that draw the dollars, like you had just said about the ticket sales increase there. You still would have been, I think, on a good road if you had gotten, say, number 2, like where the Anaheim Ducks are going to be. They're going to get a good player in Adam Fantilli. But go and think about how excited you all are now as a Blackhawks fan base here, and think about how you would have felt if you'd gotten Fantilli. You'd be doing some justifying to yourself and like really digging into his game to be like, okay, well, he does this and this and this and that. And this will, like, once again, still going to be a good player. Whereas now you can have that immediate pop of this guy's a generational player. And you can say that because I don't think you can go and say that about Adam Fantilli right now. So it is, I didn't want to get this way because, you're playing hypotheticals. And at that point, well, what if we would have gotten number 2? And reality says, we got number 1, which is great. I'm glad we live in this reality.
I did those mental gymnastics back in January.
You do that though, and you realize how big this is, I think is what I'm getting at here. You realize how big of the gap is.
Yes. There's a huge gap. And again, I did those mental gymnastics back in January, Johnny, when I was trying to settle myself on Fantilli's going to be a great Blackhawk, but he's not the type of guy that I think the last decade's worth of Hawks fans are going to be used to seeing when you put up Connor Bedard's name against Jonathan Taves, Patrick Kane, people of those ilk, when it comes to pure hockey talent and that generational talent type of player, Fantilli's going to be an excellent piece. He's going to be a bitch to play against for pretty much everybody else in the league. However, I think, you talk about the immediacy of what Connor Bedard's going to bring to the Blackhawks. Yes, we've tempered the expectations on, does this make them a contender? No, but you're going to have a guy that's going to be a highlight reel player. You're going to have a guy that's going to have the national media attention on him in Chicago with a chance to shine, original six franchise. It's great for the sport, but it's really great for the Chicago Blackhawks as well. I love it.
Yeah, saw a lot of rigged out there, but hey, if they rigged it, it was definitely the right thing to do, right? After what you just said there. No, apparently Frank's Spaghetti and Meatballs has a story coming out about it, and he says it's as legit as this gets. And then, of course, anybody who's not a Blackhawks fan commented on that and said, the fix is in. You're, mouthpiece for Gary Bettman. All those sorts of comments.
Three or four more Winter Classics with Connor Bedard jerseys. Yep. I know how this works.
I saw all of those comments too. But it's funny. We'll relish in them, Tony. I think it's just they're memes to me at this point. Because guess what? It happened, and apparently Frank says it's good enough. So you know what? One thing you can be mad
at
Frank
confirmed about from Bobby Margarita yet?
So that's the thing. Bobby's partially retired here. So you got to remember, you got to keep Bobby there. So I don't think it's actually confirmed per Bobby Margarita yet, but I would imagine that he could attest to its legitimacy. But be mad at Frank all you want for dropping the timing of that tweet and saying, he's going to have a in-depth look at the process behind the actual operations of the lottery, right? That's what I'm, talking about here. All people are mad about it, saying it's rigged and this and that. You can be mad at Frank and talk about, his relationship with the higher ups in the NHL. But can you really? He's been right. He's always been right. Whenever it's confirmed per Frank, it's always been right. Remember he tweeted out the Kraken roster like 10 hours before it dropped when they had the expansion draft? He's always been right. So
what more can you ask for?
That's legitimacy to me. So
I don't think you can ask for much else. I just like the fact that the Hawks are going to be good again. Like that's what matters to me. There's a lot of guys out there that don't want to see the Hawks be good again. A lot of folks that are going to hate on this. I'm not going to. I'm a Blackhawks fan.
All right, yeah.
I'm a Blackhawks fan. I would be mad if it was, the Anaheim Ducks.
Right.
And then I would say it was rigged against me. I'd play those same cards. Right? Yeah. Right. I'd play those same fucking cards. No. We're number one, baby, in the NHL draft. That's all that matters right now.
Feels good to be on top. One other thing I wanted to bring up here, and then we can get some final thoughts. Get on with our night. We appreciate everybody that's jumped in here in the YouTube comments too. Hope we've featured enough of them up here. That the rig comment made me laugh there too. So thank you, Notorious TBG, for that. But make sure you go subscribe on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube and make sure you hit the little bell button so you know when we go live. Join these streams again. I love to talk Hawks with all of you. Once again, on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube, and go on like the Facebook page on Tap Sportsnet there as well. One other thing I had was the first round pick from last year. We had 3 first round picks from last year, but the first one of those 3, Kevin Korchinski, number 7. And when he had talked about playing with Connor Bedard at World Juniors, and he had glowing things to say about him, and it was funny because it was a little excerpt that he had talked with Joe Brand, the post game host on WGN radio for the Blackhawks. And at the end, he was talking about, I'd like to play with him a lot more in the future. And that's how he cut it off, because he knew he couldn't say anything. He was already, under rights here with Chicago. So he can't go and, they have to be, toe the NHL, the professional line there and not say it. But you could tell how excited these guys are and already having a taste of that. Guys like those representing their country together. I bet, guys like that are probably thrilled beyond, excitement that this guy's going to be their teammate. He's going to be feeding me the puck. I'm going to be able to create plays that will set up him, talking about a defenseman for the forward, engaging a rush. And that all just makes me extremely excited because hockey is more than just one person. Sure, one person can impact the game greatly. Go and look at Connor McDavid. Go and look at Leon Draisaitl there. We're talking about a guy that's in that same kind of class there, at least hype-wise, right here. Obviously, I haven't played a damn game in the NHL yet, but hype-wise, the hype for Connor Bedard has been very real on that same level as Connor McDavid. And then you go and get these other pieces, and you got to think about, sure, well, if Bedard's going to be the superstar, you've also got a lot of other really, really solid prospects around him that are only going to continue to grow. And I think they will grow quicker with someone like Bedard because he just sees the damn ice so well. So good at setting up teammates. He's so good at, finishing when he is set up by teammates. So he's adding to your point.
What did we talk about Patrick Kane for the last 10 years doing?
He's
right?
He's adding to your confidence, right? I think it's things that we could go and branch off, talk about the tree of Connor Bedard, right? And all the positive things that can branch off from this guy. And I think we've only hit one side of it here, Tony. We could go all night with it, but I just wanted to bring that up as a perspective from another player around a similar age group who will be coming up and hopefully being part of the core for the next great Blackhawks team.
Very well said. And I think that's something that as this progresses, right? Obviously, we've got to get through some formalities. We'll get to training camp. We'll get to preseason. We'll get into the regular season next year as it starts. You want to talk about goosebumps moments as you're talking about how some of the guys are already out there with quotes about playing with Connor Bedard, and Korchinski is one of them. I can't imagine being a fly. You say this all the time, being a fly on the wall. I'd love to be a fly on the wall on the Blackhawks group text right now.
Yes. Yeah.
I would love to be a fly on the wall and just see what some of those messages are like, because the vibes have to be at an all-time high right now. Knowing that this guy's going to be part of this locker room, knowing this guy's going to be on the ice. And my comment about Patrick Kane, as you were talking there, he was the type of player that made other players better. Everything we've seen from this kid so far, he's that same ilk. He's the same type of guy, and that's where a lot of the people are going to want to come here to play in Chicago. It might not just be this offseason. It might be next year. It might be 2 years, 3 years down the road. People are going to want to come play with him. He's going to be a selling point for this franchise. He's already probably lifted the spirits of everybody in that Blackhawks team group chat just this evening, knowing that they hold the number 1 overall pick in this year's NHL draft.
I think another thing, you talked about the players, and sure, that's obviously, most important because they're the ones on the ice getting it done. But within that organization, you saw the legit smiles on Kyle Davidson's face. I followed Jamie Faulkner on Instagram, and she's reposting Darren Rovell tweets about the ticket sales increases, and people congratulating her. They're happy for her as she's the, president of business operations here. Everyone within the organization, I feel like it was an uplift after some damn hard times, some transition that we went through, both, legally in all of the issues that came about with the clearinghouse. And then also from the era aspect of saying goodbye to all those, players that there is long, deep-seated attachment to, and they gave you the golden era, so to say, of Blackhawks hockey. Now, who knows? There's going to be another stretch, 3 and 6. I mean, I don't know. That's hard to do in the dynasty era. I mean, shit, you're seeing a team that's got 2 superstars in the Edmonton Oilers. They're still trying to make it there, and they just got waxed by the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. So it's never a given. I don't want to go and count our chickens before they're hatched here. But you sure as hell got the farm all nice and prepped, and it's going to be a good environment.
I don't like to count the eggs before they're hatched, Johnny, but this was definitely a step in the right direction for this Blackhawks team. Obviously, nothing is promised, but Connor Bedard is going to be, hands down, a joy to watch in the Indian head sweater. That's facts only, as our guy Steve likes to say.
Yeah, facts only. Hashtag confirmed. And then confirmed per Ron Luce on Safari out at Wrigley Field tonight. That was cool too. I want to say there was reactions both at Wrigley Field because the Cubs were home, and then at Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City where the White Sox were playing. And there's a crowd of White Sox fans traveling there. Scott Merkin had said that White Sox fans were celebrating, starting a "Let's Go Blackhawks" chant there. And then our guy Ron was out in the bleachers, out amongst them at Wrigley Field tonight, and just the Cubs put up a video message on the board. They played Chelsea Dagger there through the speakers, and everybody this is a party, man. That watch videos from that watch party that were there in the sports book at the UC. I know it was a smaller group there, but that place was bonkers too. The excitement's real, is what I'm getting at here, and it's felt throughout the city.
Absolutely is, and I love that we got a chance to bring that up on the show, Johnny. I know we are getting close to closing up shop, but the fact that the Blackhawks have re-entered the scene in Chicago sports as an organization with a bright future is phenomenal for this organization. And it's amazing what the ping pong balls have provided us with tonight. I'm very high on the Hawks at this moment. Haven't been this high on the Hawks in a very long time. There's a bright future ahead. I think they have some of the right pieces assembled. This is another one of those right pieces. And boy, is this going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, you talk about those right pieces, 11 draft picks to work with this year. So obviously draft the ones that you want, package those in trades. Obviously not all of them, but you know what I'm saying. You have capital, right? I think that's the biggest thing there. And then there's other picks that are lined up for next year too, as a result of the trades that you've made over the last couple of years. So it's been a process, and then now you struck some luck, and you need it. You need some luck along the way. Talk about a team that went to the Stanley Cup 3 years in a row. Tampa Bay Lightning, sure, they built their roster correctly, but they had some luck involved. So some lucky bounces that went their way along the way. Some guys that maybe overperformed in terms of what their projections were, stuff like that. Sometimes you just get lucky, and the Blackhawks got lucky at the exact right time in terms of NHL prospect watching here. So I couldn't be happier, Tony. Connor Bedard.
Biggest win of the season.
Connor Bedard. Yes, it was the biggest win of the season. Is this? Never mind. That was the biggest win of the season. That's where I was going with this. We had to bring out the victory beers at it. If you follow us on Twitter at Four Feathers Pod, which if you don't already, I had to bring out the victory beers at it. I had to bring out the tank rolling over, crushing all of the other team logos there because the Blackhawks tank prevailed. It's definitely was the best win of the year. That's a really good way to put it, and I think a good kind of closing comment here. So, man, exciting day in Blackhawks history here. Can't wait for that draft in June. Hear his name actually called. It's going to be a big spectacle, and doing it in Nashville is just extra icing on the cake for me. I know it is for you, Tony. So it's about all I've got. Hit me with your final thoughts, and then let's get on out of here.
I'm so excited to be back at the UC, Johnny. It's going to be a fucking wonderful season of watching Connor Bedard play in his rookie year. Obviously, we're going to have tons to write about over at OnTap Sportsnet, following this guy's career and, all the firsts, as we sort of talked about earlier on during this show. Those are going to be fun to watch. I hope those progress. I hope the supporting cast falls into place and we have that hope turn into something tangible that we get to watch over the next 5, 6, seasons of Blackhawks hockey. It's a wonderful night to be a Blackhawks fan. Generational talent coming to your team. I'm overjoyed at the moment. I know a lot of people out there are as well. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. I don't have much else. It's going to be fun.
I got one last thought, and it's a stark contrast between beginning of last season and what will be the beginning of this upcoming season. If you remember, for the very first home preseason game against the St. Louis Blues last September, they did not even open the 300 level because they didn't sell, barely any tickets. Even the 100 level was pretty damn sparse. I remember watching that. And granted, it's preseason. It was, different. There's a better crowd there for the regular season opener, but even then, still not sold out. I have a feeling that that's going to be a little bit different come hockey season rolling around and get into September and early October when they have those types of things. That's the type of hype that this kid brings. And I wouldn't be shocked to see it feel more like a regular season game from last year during a preseason game for this upcoming season. And then I would imagine you're going to sell out a lot more. And you'll be back up near the top of that league in attendance. And once again, the madhouse will return to being a madhouse. Can't wait.
Very well said, Johnny. And I echo that statement, man. Let's read the promos and let's get out of here.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you go subscribe on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Join the conversation in the comments section. We love interacting with you there. I'm going like us on Facebook at On Tap Sportsnet. Follow us on social media on Twitter at Four Feathers Pod and at On Tap Sportsnet there as well. Go and check out OnTapSportsNet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. And have a great night, everybody. Until next time, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.